Hi, I'm Dr. Gary Lieberman, and in this video we're going to explore the VirtualBox interface, and we're also going to learn some tips and tricks of using VirtualBox, such as cloning and exporting your VM into an OVA file so that you can load it into another machine, and so on. So let's get started. So the first thing we do is to open up VirtualBox. And you notice here we have the welcome screen. That consists of 5 icons here that are important and are virtual machines on the left-hand side. The preferences button or icon here is, if you remember from the first video, how we changed the location of our VMs. But you can also set other values in here too. Input and update. You can check for updates, language, display, proxy, and the interface. So you can change all of that. Before you change anything, I would strongly urge you to look at the user manual. How do you do that? Well, under the Help button here, menu rather, you can see the online documentation. The online documentation, here it is. Everything you need to know about VirtualBox is in this documentation. First steps, installing, configuring machines, guest additions. We went over that in video 1. Virtual storage, and of course the networking, which you'll find is one of the most useful pages going. And we'll explore the networking in the next and last video. So that's how you get to the online documentation. You also have the ability of downloading the documentation if you want. And you can create that, store it locally. But it's always available online, so there's really no reason to store it on your disk and take up the space. So that's the preferences and that's the help. These 4 buttons, we explored them while we were creating VMs. So those are useful for import. We did not explore the export button, which we're going to do in a few seconds. And then there's another button here under the menu. There's extensions, there's media, network, cloud, and activities. You can verify the different things there from these buttons. Most of the time you're going to be using the welcome screen. Under machine, there's just another way to get to the new and add. And of course under file, you can import an appliance and export an appliance, and then there's the tools, which are your extension pack and everything that's under the hamburger here. And of course you check for updates and reset all warnings. So that's kind of what the GUI is. The GUI is pretty simple, not a lot of complicated buttons to push. So now that we've created these VMs, there's an ability to group them into groups. So you can create a group by right-clicking on the VM and move to a group. And we're going to select a new group. And you see we've created the group. And we can collapse the group and we can expand the group. We can also change the group's name. Rename group, and we could call this CYB 505, let's say. And you can grab another VM and move it into the group. And now you can collapse that group and expand the group. We also have the ability to clone a VM. Now cloning is great because let's say we just loaded our Kali Linux. And we haven't started doing anything with it yet. And we want to make sure that we don't have to go through that install. Or better yet, the Windows 2019. We did that install and we used an ISO file. And it took about 15 minutes or 20 minutes to build the machine. So we really don't want to have to go through that again. If we're doing something, especially configuring a domain controller, configuring AD and DNS, and we make a mistake. We want to blow it away and start over, remove the VM. Well, we'd have to reload the ISO. But if we create a clone, we don't have to do that. An easy way to create the clone is simply by right-clicking on the VM and say clone. And we have the ability to create a complete clone. And you say full or linked clone. We want a full clone. And that'll take a few seconds to do. You'll see the progress in the log. And our clone is now finished. And you'll see that we now have a clone here and a server there. And they will work equally. They'll be separate and equal as VMs. If you look at, let's bring up our Explorer, go to VirtualBox, and you see that we now have a clone. But what we can do with the clones is I always like to do this, move them to a group. And say a new group, and we want to call this, we'll rename the group and we'll call it the clones. And then I can just close that down. So now if we wanted to get rid of the Windows because it's not working, we've messed it up, we've experimented, we've done all kinds of things, we've installed a virus, whatever, and now we want to get rid of it, we can simply right-click and say remove. And we have an option to delete all files, which is generally what you want to do. I'm not going to do it right now. And then you can go over to clones and you can clone the clone. Once you clone the clone, you can rename it and move it out of the clones group out onto the desktop, and you're back in business right where you were at the point that you made the clone. So this way you can always have a copy or a backup of the VMs that you're working on. So cloning is a great thing because it's better to always back up and have a spare. This way, if you make a mistake, you just go get the clone. Now, the other thing I want to show you is the ability to create an appliance that's loadable into another iteration of VirtualBox. Let's say you're moving from one machine to another machine. You've got a new laptop. You can export your VM to an OVA file. You remember we loaded that OVA file before? You can export your VM to an OVA file and then import it into your new VirtualBox. Now the way we would create an OVA output file, well, let's take the Windows 2019. You want to export. Where is export? Oh, there it is. Yep. I don't know why that cloud failure comes up all the time, but that's your default to cloud failure. So you want to go to guided mode, continue. Yeah. Yes, I know, cloud failure. So what we want to do is we don't want the cloud infrastructure. We want to go to Open Virtualization Format 2.0. And that's going to create an OVA. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the OVA in my downloads directory. And I'm going to hit next. And now you can fill out all the information here. You can hit description and you can edit, and a window pops up. You can say, this is my OVA export. Whatever description you want, and you can fill in all of these fields if you want, or to leave them blank. And now you're starting your export. Now if we go to downloads, you'll see that there's an OVA file starting here. It won't get fully named until it's finished exporting, and that's going to take a little while. So we'll pause the video recording again, and we'll come back when that's pretty much close to being finished. Okay, our export has finished, and one of the things I neglected to do when we were setting up the OVA is name it. So I'm going to add a name in here now, and that was a Windows Server 2019 OVA. And now if you wanted to bring that file over to another machine, you could do the import the same way we did the Ubuntu a few minutes ago. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you is, remember when we saved the state? When you can shut down, you have those options. You can save the state, which is hibernate the VM. You could power it off, or you could signal the OS in the VM to shut itself down. So you have this saved state. Well, that's what this discard button is. When you have something in a saved state and you go to edit it, it's not going to let you change certain things. Like, I can't change the network interface. I can't change the storage. They're all grayed out. So there's a lot of things that I can't change. The display settings. So you can't change these when the system is in a saved state. So the discard button changes that to a powered down state. So if I were to highlight the VM and discard, it's going to ask me if I'm sure I want to do it. And you see that it's now in a powered off state. And so if we go into settings, we can now change the network, the storage, the system, the display, and so on. They're no longer grayed out, like the save state would be here. Network is grayed out and so on. So that's what the discard button it does. It discards the current state of the VM. Then under the start, you have a normal start, a headless start, a detachable start. I don't think anybody uses these too much. You really stick with the normal start. That's the thing that you want to do. And then the other part here is that your VM settings are all displayed here. So if you're going to do a screen capture for an assignment or something, you really want to capture this whole thing and send it to the professor so the professor can help you if you're running into a problem. Okay, so that's really a walk around the interface. And we'll see you in the next video, where I'm going to talk about the network settings, and that will be the last video.